Welcome to the Whiskey Vault. I'm Daniel Whittington, Chancellor of Wizard Academy and Whiskey Marketing School. Ooh. This video I wanted to talk about what comes first, the idea of a whiskey or the whiskey itself leading to the final product. So it's sort of a chicken egg thing. Do you start with, here's the whiskey, and then what does it become? Or do you start with, I want this thing, and you go back and create it using the whiskey that you have? That's sort of two different ways and approaches to making final product for distillers. Now, I think the answer is both, but depending on where you're at in the how old your distillery is process, your mileage may vary. When Crowded Barrel first started out, we had to source barrels, just like a lot of distilleries choose to do. We chose to source from MGP at the time, while we were trying to get our legs up and distilling things. When you're handed a whole bunch of whiskey, you don't get to really sit and dream of like, what could we be? Who are we? What do we want to provide to the world? You sort of have to start with the whiskey barrels and go, all right, what do we got? And how do we make the best of what we have that is most in tune with who we are and what we believe about the world? Well, for us, that was to let the people vote on which barrels to release, to give them tasting notes, to decide on whether or not we were going to finish something. And so that's when you can do some things to make changes to the whiskey, but you're really taking an existing product and just slightly guiding and shaping it towards your preferences for your brand. That's a whiskey-first approach. The whiskey told us what it needed to be. We just brought it to the best version of itself. And I think that's a good one. With Single Mom, we did the reverse. We started with an idea that the community voted on. These fermentations, these grains, these barrels, these cuts, right? And we're like, this is what we're going to do. And then we applied all of that to the whiskey. And 3.5 years later, as the whiskey was sort of guided through and helped out and proofed a little and moved around the warehouse. And then it reached what we thought was a really magical point, and we released it. And it won the best single malt in Texas, grain to glass single malt in Texas. We helped it along the way, but we did start with an idea first. That was sort of a hybrid. But what happens when you have hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands or 10,000 barrels or hundreds of barrels at a time for a blend? What do you do then? Oh, my friend, the world opens to you now. But first, let's try this. This is Macallan. I saw this and thought this would be interesting to try out. It's called A Night on Earth in Jerez, which is just over the border of El Paso, Texas. But not really. They're talking about Jerez, Spain. They're not talking about Jerez, Mexico. Jerez, this is right in the heart of sherry barrel country, right? Jerez is the area around where there's a lot of sherry cask and sherry development. I had to look up what this was. These are tribute bottles that were all released. They did a series of them. These were tribute bottles that were released around their 200th anniversary. 200 years, that's pretty cool. 200-year-old distillery. Take that, Andalusia. Sorry, Ty. I don't know why I picked on you. Maybe because you just won all these awards and I felt like you needed some humility in your life. What I usually love about Macallan is when Macallan makes things, they tend to aim, in my experience, they tend to aim at the nose first. I don't know if they are they have a perfumer on staff, but the nose of Macallan's always is just magnificent. I've always felt that, 3/4 of the time the palate doesn't live up to the nose, and about 1/4 of the time the palate is like, yes, thank you, there it is. But they definitely, nose is the game with Macallan. They are all about the aroma. And so I love my first experience of a Macallan smelling the glass is one of my favorite moments with Macallan. And here you go. This is no different. This is a really wet earth vineyard while holding a deep, hefty, weighty, fruity glass of wine in your hand. But you're walking through a vineyard. There's baked goods and dough. There's wet earth. There's almost a spice to this, like a bing. Like that almost sherry funkiness, but turns into like dark browns and blacks in my head. But it's just rich. Coated, dense, heavy, weighty, oily. Yeah. 43%. And the palate is fine. Good even. Just half as magical as the nose. Easily. Half. It's soft. The finish just turns into a little bit of water left with, and then a lingering sort of licorice wood aftertaste. It's fine. It's nice. It's not great. It's not magical. The nose, oof. The nose on a Macallan will prove to you that a 40, 43, low 40s whiskey has the ability to have a really beautiful nose. And the palate, in my experience, tends to taste like a lower proof scotch. Strangely, I'm going to add a little water to see if this will crack some things open. I forgot my little straw, but I can be gentle. There we go. Now, when I got this, I am going to show it. Normally, I would do this on the other channel. Let me put this here for a second. It did come in this box. Check this out. They had an artist. Her name is Maria Malero, born in Jerez, who designed this thing. I should probably face towards it. Look at that. That is beautiful. Yeah. And then you open it, and what you get is a whole other box inside a box. Look, that comes out, right? That's what the bottle's in. And then there's all this writing. You can read signature. And then the bottle was in this, which you lift this up, and there it is. Look at that. Isn't that cool? They definitely never skimp on the packaging. I mean, that's $50 in packaging right there. Okay. So, when you've got tons of barrels and you've got a wide enough profile of samples of what's coming out of your warehouse, you absolutely can sit back in a room and with the knowledge of your palette that you have to play with, which is what I think of it like, here's the colors you have to play with that knowledge, you can dream and say, what do we want to create? What matters to us? What do we think is interesting? What do we want to celebrate? Could we make a whiskey that is the whiskey interpretation of a feeling or a moment or an idea? And I think that's what they were doing with this, which I think is really cool. Balcones does this a lot. That's one of the things I love most about them. They love to try to think of something that matters in an idea and then try to blend towards that. And I just think that's a really magical way to approach whiskey. You can argue that, I mean, because this lets you release no age statement whiskeys because you're blending towards an idea. You could argue that it like lets you shortcut things and sell whiskey faster, or, you know, like brands like Ardbeg have maybe put out too many of these ideas and not enough recreation of stability core. But regardless, anytime I encounter a whiskey that looks like they started with an idea, I prefer to enter the experience hoping for the best and believing, until proven otherwise, that these people picked a magical idea and then went to work to try to create it with whiskey, because I just think that's a really cool thing. And I like to honor those people who take that adventure because it's not an easy path. And cheers to you. Cheers to them. I'm really glad you're here. Wow, I was walking away from that one and my palate changed to chocolate licorice. And I don't know why. That was a tasting note I didn't get until I stood up and started walking away. It's getting better with the water. Sorry. Like and subscribe.